welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It's that time again. It is time for NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production. So here we are. The 2014 season is over. One of the most, it was a good Super Bowl and then a puzzling ending. But I'm not going to go ahead and analyze that myself. Of course, I don't work alone here. I only work with the best. So let's go ahead and bring in maybe the only man who can make sense of that last call in the Super Bowl, none other than Chris Lardieri. Chris, what's happening?
Charles, thank you so much. It was a great season, culminated by a great game and a puzzling ending. 3 days after the Super Bowl, I'm still scratching my head, and I don't have a good reason or excuse or alibi as to why Pete Carroll and or Darrell Bevell would call that play.
The worst part was, it's one thing with what Carroll said the day after, but did you hear his explanation right after the game when they interviewed him, maybe 5 or 10 minutes afterwards, when he was trying to explain about the whole thing of, we're going to do this, and then second down, and then third down, and then we figured this, and then we do that, and then it was really kind of, borderline pathetic, or it was like you got caught. You're standing there, the gun is still in your hand, the barrel is smoking, and you're standing there with the dead body on the ground and trying to explain how you didn't actually do it. That was what it sounded like. Yeah,
pretty much shooting someone and saying it was self-inflicted. Yeah. I completely agree. His explanation, while I think it was even more of a head-scratcher, at one point I was like, does he really believe what he's saying? Because no one else does. And he was speaking very rapid. I don't know if any of our friends out there in the audience are FBI profilers or anything like that, but that's going to be some sort of tell that he was either telling a lie or wanted to get the heck out of there.
We got to remember, on top of everything else, Seattle had a timeout left. It'd be one thing if he panicked because they had no timeout and made a play call he wished he could have back. That's one thing. But they had a timeout left too. They could have went beast mode. If he doesn't make it, call timeout and figure it out from there. And even if they did that, Mr. Lardieri, you'd have to agree, that's not really the call that you want, that slant route over the middle like that.
Absolutely not. And even if they do complete the pass, and let's face it, Butler made a tremendous play, and he had gotten burned on it in practice during the week, and Brandon Browner pointed out to him right before that play as they were lining up. But let's say Wilson makes a miraculous throw, Butler just misses it. There's still a very good shot that if he catches the ball on the one, another Patriot defender tackles him and brings him down inside the goal line in the field of play. Right. So then you're still back at square one. You threw a pass, and now the clock's running. Why not run the ball? 2, if you are going to call a pass, which, okay, I get it, roll Wilson out, which he had success with, and if nothing's open, give him the option. He runs it in, or he runs it out of bounds, or put it in the corner of the end zone out of the reach of everyone and give beast mode the ball on third and goal. I just don't get it. Everyone I was watching it with was just appalled, and to Chris Collinsworth's credit, he said it. He just couldn't believe the call. I mean, some people are flat out saying it's not only the worst call in Super Bowl history, perhaps football history or professional sports history. I mean, days later, this is still reverberating on sports talk radio. It's really nothing I've ever seen in my lifetime.
And where it was how bad the call was when you look at Twitterverse and everything, and look at what the Patriots fans are putting out there. They're not even really. They're happy the Patriots won, but they're. I think it's one thing to get lucky, but that was beyond even lucky. And they know it, and I'll have to give everyone credit. I mean, within the Patriots organization, look at Tom Brady, look at Belichick, and even all the way down to the Patriots fans, as obnoxious as they can be. They know that they kind of got handed one there because they're not really bragging about it. They're just happy their team won, no matter how it had to happen.
Absolutely, and part of me thinks the football gods gave them one back for Mr. David Tyree and Mr. Mario Manningham, although those were not luck. They were phenomenal plays that required skill, but those were once-in-a-lifetime type passes that happened to occur twice. That's the only thing I could think of, because that was a gift from above.
And you know what? They almost got burned by a fantastic catch by, was that Jermaine Kearse, who made that catch on the sideline right before they got into that position. So Brady must be thinking, good Lord, what do I have to do here?
Yeah, I've got to tell you, that might go down as one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history that everyone's going to forget. The Seahawks win that game. That's probably on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Yep.
That's the next David Tyree right there, and gone and forgotten. And I got to tell you, analyzing it a lot, I taped the game today. I'm going to watch it again, particularly the fourth quarter. The Seattle Dayton, they were depleted, and that's part of the reason why I picked the Patriots. But to give up a 10-point lead when you're supposedly the best defense in all of football, inexcusable. And I'm still trying to figure out why they couldn't catch Julian Edelman and tackle him to the ground. He had a phenomenal game. Personally, I thought he should have been MVP, but I get it. The quarterback usually gets it. But they had no answer for Edelman. It was unbelievable. A team just suddenly stopped tackling like that.
Well, I think that Seattle defense really, I think they were a lot more banged up than they really let on. And one guy broke his arm. Richard Sherman is having Tommy John surgery. Earl Thomas was banged up. I think they had given pretty much all they had to give in that game.
I get it. And then I think also a key play in the game that people forget, Cliff Averill getting a concussion. And not coming
there you
back.
go. That too.
And that really just stymied the pass rush to where Brady was just picking them apart. It looked like a touch football game in spurts. But yeah, thinking about all this, there's got to be one team that we kind of forgotten about them now due to this colossal screw up. But how do the Green Bay Packers feel right now? I think that the Packers probably would have played just as good, if not a better game in that Super Bowl. And Mike McCarthy's conservative and all, but I still think he'd give Eddie Lacy the ball down there by the goal line if he had a shot with a timeout left.
Every time I watch a Super Bowl from this point forward, I'm going to be talking about that call. I know it. But one thing I thought was perhaps they wanted to, for whatever, the sake of appearances, maybe they were trying to make Russell Wilson the MVP of the game instead of Marshawn Lynch, because we know if Lynch gets that touchdown, he's absolutely the MVP of the Super Bowl. He gets that touchdown, they win the game. And I'm not all that big on conspiracy theories, but honestly, that is the only way I can wrap my head around why you would make a call like that, is if you didn't want Lynch to get that game-winning touchdown.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that it's popular among the conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
I'm not an NFL coach. I just pretend to play one that coaches rec softball and baseball. But I can tell you, in close games like that, and I've been in elimination playoff games, there are times where I'm thinking about nothing. I could have a player on the field who, I don't know, maybe never hit the ball, let's say, for instance, and she's at the plate, and never would it cross my mind where I'd say, oh, this girl's never going to get a hit. I think you just get so in the zone, and it's almost like your body freezes and you're running on autopilot, and you could feel the stress around you, but you tune out everything. You tune out crowd noise and all that, and at no point would I think like, yeah, I hope she hits the ball. She hasn't done it this year. At that point, you're just like, all right, one pitch at a time. I get your point, but I really don't think Pete Carroll at that point, and as much as I like to poke fun at Pete and think that... you
don't want to give him that much credit, right?
Yeah, you know what? I know the play was overthought, but that's really overthinking it. That's CIA-type stuff there, Charles.
Yeah, I know. I just... and as everyone knows out there, I'm not a fan of the Seahawks or the Patriots. I mean, I don't dislike them either, but I just, for my love of football, just my pure love of the purity of the sport, I really have difficulty with that call. That's all. And, we can transition on that. You mentioned the crowd noise. That situation in Atlanta, where I guess they've been piping in some artificial crowd noise, which would explain why the crowd was so exuberant when the team was playing so badly.
Yeah, that's something I thought doesn't happen anymore. I don't get it. But, to the Falcons' credit, no one's going to cheer for that team, so they may as well do something. They're going to pull the Disneyland where they pump in the chocolate chip cookie smell on Main Street so you'll go buy cookies. I don't know. I mean, what else do you do? Get a cattle prod to get your fans to get off their seats and cheer? I'm not quite sure. But, it just never ceases to amaze. And, everyone talks about the Deflategate scandal. There are gimmicks and cheating and bending the rules in football. There has been, there always will be. It's just who's dumb enough to get caught. And good work, Falcons. Dan Quinn, I hope you bring your earplugs. They're going to have to pump in some more noise next year.
Yep. So for those of you who might not know, Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks, is going to be the new head coach in Atlanta and try to get that thing turned around there. And they do need someone who knows a little bit of defense in Atlanta, but we'll see. Because honestly, the Falcons, I still think, I don't trust Matty Ice in the clutch, but that's a whole different ball game. They have what they have, but I think they're really not that far away from being a 9-7, 10-6 team again, especially in that division they're in.
Absolutely, and if Smith can turn the defense around, I think you look at the Saints, they're getting old, and they really had a bad year. The Buccaneers, even though they have the one pick, I think are years away, and let's face it, the Panthers go 7-8-1, 8-8, 7-9, whatever the case is. I don't think that's enough to win the division next year, and the Falcons will have an easier schedule, so we shall see with Jones and White healthy again. You never know on the offensive side of the ball, but I think a good hiring, and I'm sure Mr. Quinn's probably happy to be out of Seattle now, and that pressure keg there.
Yep. So we'll see. And now, who would have guessed that the wheels would have come off like they did the Cleveland Browns when they finally look like they're getting things going? And we had talked about Cleveland on the last show here, where I talked about looking at them and seeing what they're going to do with the whole Manziel situation. Johnny Manziel is in rehab now. Josh Gordon got himself suspended for yet another year. And now their GM is in trouble because I guess he was texting plays down to the sidelines while he was up in the press box. So there you have Cleveland's about to turn everything around for the first time in God knows how many years. And now the wheels are off. The thing has crashed. The engine has been pulled. They're done. Yeah,
I'm going to go out on a limb here, and you can smack me in the head if you disagree, but they're starting to look like the east of the Mississippi version of the Raiders. Could you imagine Al Davis right around now texting plays into the sideline? Or you look at what happened with Josh Gordon and all. I mean, they had some characters in the Raiders locker room, but I think Gordon and Johnny Football might take the cake. And look, I'm not going to make light of the situation. Alcoholism's a serious problem. I give Manziel credit, whether his handlers or he finally woke up and realized I can't be getting hungover and oversleeping in practices and meetings. Good for him. But Josh Gordon still doesn't get it. And people are like, oh, he was just drinking alcohol. Well, guess what? Once you're an offender, you can't do anything. Just ask Matt Prater. And for him to go out there and go off on Chris Carter and Stephen A. Smith and blaming them, that guy still doesn't get it, and there's no accountability there. And he's really just going to piss away, pardon my French, a really potentially great career.
Yeah, and the worst part is that, well, Josh Gordon, he wants to lash out at people who were assuming that he had a problem with alcohol. He says that's not it. And what he doesn't realize, in a situation like this, where you were just suspended, you just got off a 10-game suspension, then you go and drink and get suspended for a whole nother year, being called an alcoholic is actually an acceptable excuse, because if that's not your problem, then do we have to go to knucklehead or what?
Yeah, just stupidity. I mean, really, we're out of explanations at that point. I don't get it. I mean, clearly he's got a bunch of yes men around him.
Yeah.
And he shouldn't lash out at Chris Carter, because Chris Carter nearly got run out of the NFL for drug problems. He was with the Philadelphia Eagles for a while. People forget that. Straightened his life out, went to the Vikings, and thanks to Dennis Green and that organization, turned things around, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I know. So, I don't get it. And it's like this. You take anybody, and let's just put this in perspective for all you out there who are not professional athletes. You got to look at it this way. And I don't know what anyone does out there, but if it came down to, I'll give you $7 million to not have a drink for a year, would you do it? Chris, could you do that?
Absolutely could. If my doctor told me that for $0 a year, I would do it. Never mind my well-being.
Right. Well, you look at all the other teams. I think one of the big things is free agent watch is going to be coming up. So we got a bunch of them, of course, the situation in Dallas with Des Bryant, DeMarco Murray. Then there's Demaryius Thomas and Wes Welker in Denver. Ndamukong Suh, Vince Wilfork also. Vince Wilfork and Darrelle Revis in New England. But I think it's March 10th is when the deadline is. So anyone who's on the roster, that's when those roster bonuses and things kick in. So about the next month is going to get kind of exciting around here.
Absolutely. Another case in point of the NFL is an 11-month league news cycle-wise. We're going to have the Combine later this month and right into free agency. And in a matter of weeks here, we could be back on Peyton Manning watch, which is becoming an annual occurrence. Will he come back? He's due a tremendously high roster bonus. And let's not forget our good friends Jay Cutler and RGIII. They're due to make a boatload of money. Will they get cut? Will Sanchez be out there on the free agent market to reunite with his BFF Rex Ryan, now the king of Buffalo? A lot of potential changes and interesting storyline.
I looked at the way that ESPN, when they were doing they're wrapping up the Super Bowl and everything, and you know what the narrative is now is Tom Brady the best quarterback in history? So after 7 or 8 years of them trying to convince us all that Peyton Manning was the best in history, I guess now they're going to try to convince us that Brady is actually the best in history. Just like that, over the course of just a few weeks, it was Manning is the greatest ever, and now it's Brady is the best ever. So at least you can back up the whole Brady is the best ever thing with some arguments that have some merit.
Absolutely, and this is the same guy who on a Tuesday in October was being chided by ESPN for being done, and Jimmy Garoppolo needed to start. So how quickly things change. The winds really change quickly there out of Connecticut. I think it's a good debate. I mean, the gold standards are Bradshaw and Montana with their 4 Super Bowls, but they ran the table. They were perfect. Everyone says, well, Brady made it to 2 others, and they lost heartbreakers to the Giants. It's an interesting debate. If he can get a 5th, then I think there's no really debate there. No one else has ever done that. That said, I think it's still up for debate. For me, I still say it's Joe Montana, but I think we've got a horse race now, and this is good fodder for the talking heads at the very least. I have no clue. I know he'll be a Hall of Famer. I know he's a great quarterback. Who knows? The old-timers will tell you Johnny Unitas was the greatest, so what do I know?
To me, it's about getting into that conversation. So when it gets down to it, if you built a team like the Niners had, or any of the Pittsburgh Steelers had, if you interchange the quarterbacks, so would the Steelers have been as successful in the 70s if they had a Tom Brady or a Joe Montana at quarterback, or John Elway? The answer is yes, they would have. So that puts those guys in that discussion along with Terry Bradshaw. And Bradshaw, I still think, doesn't get enough credit for just how great a quarterback he was. He just kind of is looked at as that kind of dumb country bumpkin who happened to play on a team with a really great defense. But Bradshaw was out there. He called all his own plays. They won 4 Super Bowls, and Bradshaw was clutch. He was absolutely clutch.
Completely agree, and even just to get through the AFC, which was brutal back then.
Yeah.
You look at the Raiders and the Dolphins and some other great teams, and then it seemed like every year they're playing the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, and it's a couple of great matchups. So, yeah, he really does. And when I was young, I remember everyone thought how phenomenal he was, and he's just kind of, between the cannonball run and his babbling on Fox NFL Sunday, it's like he lost some points.
Staubach was another. I mean, neither of us are Cowboy fans, but he was one guy. I could even as young as I was, I could tell that Staubach was something special when he was out there playing. And sure enough, you could never get him down. That was with the Cowboys. You had to get your foot on their neck and just crush the life out of him. Otherwise, he would resurrect that team, and sure enough, he'd break your heart in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, the man who brought us the shotgun and the Hail Mary pass. People forget that.
Yeah. So we're going to probably be doing a show for everyone every couple of weeks or so here in the off season, just to keep you up to date on the latest goings on. But Mr. Lardieri always has a few good musings for us. So talk to me, Chris. What do you got for the good folks out there?
But of course. So I'm not sure if anyone noticed when the post-game presentation of the Lombardi Trophy was happening Sunday night. Bob Kraft did not even look at his former good buddy Roger Goodell on the podium, and that got me to thinking. And I know you got your conspiracy theory, and I'm not going to disparage you for that. I think it's interesting, but this one I think has legs, so bear with me. Roger Goodell, as we know, and if you listen to this show, you know very well, has had a terrible season. He's incompetent, and although he's made the league tons of money, the vultures are circling. One of his allies was Bob Kraft. Will Bob Kraft turn on him now based on this Deflategate? And now Troy Vincent came out and leaked that the Gregson, the Colts general manager, was the one who reported it to the league, which is another bonehead move under Goodell's watch. And will Kraft turn on him? And, you know, may have an ally in Jerry Jones, who's not too happy with the Des Bryant catch, non-catch, and who knows, maybe some of the old guard owners, like we speculated last week, might jump on board, like the Maras, the Brunies, and the Hunts. So this is something I'm trying to keep an eye on. Now, I still think he's Teflon, but if Bob Kraft turns, he's really one of the leaders of these owners right now. He's came in the 90s, mid-90s, bought the team, so it's not like it's a legacy thing. If he turns, does that so go Goodell's fate? I'm curious to see what you think about my conspiracy theory.
You know, that very well could be. I mean, looking at the amount of weight that Kraft carries around with all the other owners and the league, that might happen because, like they say, Goodell does visit with the other owners, but there does seem to be a little bit of a thing there between him and Kraft. And I'm not saying that gives the Patriots any type of competitive advantage. I'm not starting any of that. But it comes down to one of those things where he works for the owners, Goodell works for the owners, and Bob Kraft is one of the more vocal of all the owners. So, yeah, we'll see about that. He does carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting as people sit back and reflect on the season, and then we'll have the league meetings and so forth. I'm wondering what the buzz will be. So, yeah, Roger Goodell, whether he likes it or not, always seems to be in the limelight. And then he had his annual State of the League address and got snippy with Rachel Nichols, who asked a legitimate question, if you ask me. Then, naturally, that sends a great message. A league who runs all these hand-wringing, tear-jerking commercials about domestic violence, and he snaps at a woman. Don't you think that's great, Charles?
Well, you know what? All I know is he's bringing an extra $400 million into the league this year because of that new contract with DirecTV. So I think when all is said and done, you know where I'm going with that one.
Money talks.
And everything else walks.
That's right. And speaking of BS, a great way to end the season. Thanks again. I've enjoyed doing it. Whether it was Pete Carroll, Darrell Bevel, I think that call was BS, but what do I know? That's my final thought of the season.
You know, for everyone out there who everyone likes to say, well, could you have done it better than Pete Carroll? Well, no, I'm not saying, I'm not a football coach. I couldn't call a play. There's no way I could go behind the bench there and call a game or anything, but I know what types of formations you need to be and what types of offense you need to be running. Should it be short pass? Should you be going deep? Should you be running? In that case, with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield, you run.
Absolutely.
That's it.
You know, in the first quarter of the game, Brady forced one similarly over the middle and got picked off by Lane, who ended up breaking his arm. But, I mean, case in point, that was a bonehead play, too. It didn't really have the outcome on the game that the Seahawks blunder did, but if the Patriots even get 3 there, they're probably not even in that position.
And remember, too, in the Patriots' backfield is Brandon Browner, who played for the Seahawks last year. So certain things, he still knows what their offense is going to do.
And I hope you're not pointing at a Spygate 2 scandal, but I get your point.
No. Okay, when a player changes teams and goes to another, that's one thing. That's why you got to change your play calls and your playbook several times a season now because of free agency. But you have to know going in to the Super Bowl, you have a defensive back there who knows your offense and the whole system and everything. So you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and Browner was the one who pointed out to Butler, be ready to cover and jump this route.
Yeah. On the other side, they should have known that was coming because Browner is over there. But, you know, we got to give it up for Butler. We'll talk about the play call, but remember, the play still has to be made by Butler. And there are plenty of defensive backs who have been in a similar situation and wind up dropping the ball. And if you want to go back to the Super Bowl, the second one that the Niners won against the Bengals, there's a man you'll never even hear his name, Lewis Billups, dropped a sure touchdown pass, or excuse me, an interception in the end zone that Montana had thrown and hit him right in the numbers. And then right after that, Montana hits John Taylor on a slant route, and Billups is just a footnote in history, and only real football nerds like me even remember him. But I remember that play when it happened. I was like, oh my God, he just dropped that. Then, conversely, you have, the David Tyree play. You have what Mario Manningham did and what Jermaine Kearse did there down the sideline. So, hey, it's all about those little moments and what you do in those moments. And that's one thing Larry Brown said when he was named Super Bowl MVP, because Neil O'Donnell threw 2 balls to him in the Super Bowl when the Steelers were playing. But he said the same thing. He goes, I watch almost every Super Bowl, and every Super Bowl I see defensive backs drop interceptions. He says, I'm not one of the greatest defensive backs ever, but I've just never dropped an interception. That's all.
Exactly.
You hit me between the numbers, I hang on to the ball. That's it.
Yep, and as we saw, even on an onside kick, it's key. It may look simple, but you need to grab it.
Yep, there we go. All right, everybody, so remember, follow yours truly on Twitter at The Inside Sports, and also you get some really good nuggets of wisdom with, oh wait, you're not sarcastic, you're not cynical, there's sardonicism in the tweets of Chris Lardieri at Chris L Sports. Follow him at Chris L Sports, everybody. Trust me, you'll be better human beings if you do. So, for Mr. Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. Thanks for watching this season. We'll be back intermittently during the offseason, and then we'll be ramping it up as the year goes on. So remember, this is NFL Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production, and we do it all for you. Thanks for watching.